this is another nugget from Nannah. Stay hydrated, but that's not the nugget. So, a conversation that we had, dear grands, the conversation we had was expectations versus reality. So, give you a scenario and situation and outcome. So, person saw a nurse doing diversion every day, 3 o'clock, the nurse sleep. But she passed a whole lot of narcotics, but 3 to 6, she's out. Classic diversion. And this has to do with like nurses eating their young, but this is again, reality versus expectations. Don't have false expectations. So this nurse complained every day you work with her about how her kids were drug addicts and totaled her car and yada yada. But when she gives these medications, she sleeps or disappears. All the nurses knew she disappeared and she slept in rooms, and she had been there for like 20, 30 years. So they just kept on going. Nobody said anything, nobody did anything. But when you go over your, what do you call it? Modules or computer learning, education regarding diversion, that's when the nurse is supposed to give the medication. She gives it, but she fakes like she gives it, and then ends up taking the medication herself. So, diverting. So, again, I kept saying, this is strange, and I thought to my head, classic textbook diversion. So, and like I said, sleeping 3 a.m., 6 a.m., out. Wake up just in time to draw the labs and give but it was classic. Slurred speech, anything. So, nobody ever photographed that nurse sleeping. Nobody ever said anything about, I think she might be, diverting. Nobody said anything. They just kept working. So there was this one male nurse. I'll tell you how nurses eat the young. He was a black male nurse, very smart, tall, young, and he was always very helpful. I admired him because one day I was at the Pyxis and I was doing a medication. I said, I need you to I need you to witness this waste. So I'm wasting this medication, and I'm doing the waste part. And he says, Miss Alice. And I said, yes. He was like, how much you supposed to give? He had already calculated this that fast. I said, look here, genius. And then I, how's this? He was like, perfect. So, but he was very smart, very knowledgeable, open, prudent, asked questions, worked hard, on time every day. So I forgot what he had did. I think his dog was sick or something. And he was going back and forth to the vet and working 12-hour nights. I worked this place for a whole year, and I watched that lady sleep for an entire year. When he was going back, dealing with like family illness and this, and he came to work, and he never nodded off. This was the one night, I think he just closed his eyes for 10 seconds. So the nurses got together and took a picture. And when they took the picture, they sent the picture of him sleeping straight to corporate, or to HR. So he was called in, thank you. He was called in on a meeting, and here's this photo of him sleeping on the job. Black, male nurse, first year of nursing. He watched all those nurses sleep. He never said a peep. He even watched the day shift too. It was like the day shift came on, and the nurse was at the nurse station snoring. And the day shift and the night shift joked about how hard that nurse would sleep at the nurse's station. So I see him and he's distraught, he's frustrated. And I'm like, what's wrong? He like somebody took a picture of him sleeping and sent it to HR. This is a clear-cut example of when I tell you about how nurses eat their young. All those people were sleeping on the job. He went through some family crisis, had a sick dog, trying to make every shift, closed his eyes 10, 15 seconds, and somebody snapped the picture and sent it off to HR. Why? So, again, I went to my manager because this is the cliques, the gangs, the you don't fit in here that I'm talking about. He was on time, he worked hard, he was knowledgeable, he was a team player, he was helpful, he was well-spoken, spoke 3 different languages. I admired a young man with the accomplishments that he had at that age. I think he was like 21, maybe 21, 25. He was young. So I went into the manager's office and I said, again, when they want you to out, and they've made a decision as a team that you're out, then they're gonna make an exit plan and an exit strategy. Craziest thing ever. But and again, management, I think, has to know when people are being railroaded or escorted out and not being granted the equal opportunity to work someplace. And management called them in the office and said this, and this. And again, they kept riding him. Then one day, a doctor ordered something on a day shift, didn't get done on a day shift. They told him to do it 6 hours later. Well, he asked the charge nurse, you know, they ordered this at 11 a.m. They told me to do it. He asked the charge nurse, do you want me to take this, DC this or whatever? The charge nurse said, no, let day shift do it tomorrow. It wasn't ordered stat, they can do it. Well, then they called him in the office and wrote him up. He didn't, again, senselessness. I kept in contact with him. And I didn't just keep in contact with him. You know, I went into the office and I told the manager, look here. You remember that day this, and this happened? That nurse was asleep at the nurse station. You didn't get a photo. This nurse sleeps every night from 3 to 6. You haven't got a photo. And I said, day shift and night shift, these are the 5 nurses that joke with this one nurse and said she was snoring so loud when they come on, they wondering what she did. Did she have, what did they say? Did she have, it's the orange juice and champagne. Did she have that drink? I can't think of the name of it. But did she have that before she came to work? She was snoring so hard. And I thought to myself, why is this young black man being forced out of a job, first year? And I still text him, how are you? You're a great nurse. Just don't you know I'm thinking about you. And I know he was back in school and he no longer worked for that facility. He just started working PRN because of the antics of you trying to fit into some place where you're black, you're a male, you're a new nurse. you're black, you're old, and you're a new nurse to that facility. Either way, you know, it has to be some type of, and it is knowledgeable. And I don't know why, when management sees that these things are happening, do they just, let's make the team happy. We're gonna write this up on here, and there you just enough right. You write them up until all of a sudden you're terminated. And they're not terminated based on actual mistakes. You're not terminated based on actual absences. You're not terminated based on lack of knowledge. You're terminated because this group of nurses don't want to accept you into their clique, and so therefore you don't fit into their whatever, and you're out. Now, does that violate EEOC policy and your rights to employment? Does that violate the hospital's stance on equal opportunity employer? This is the reality versus false expectations. If you go, I remember this one guy. He was a football star, black guy. He was a football star, graduated from college, went to college for I think something about broadcasting, and got a job with a news station. First day on the job, the lady just ragged on him. Second day on the job, the lady just ragged on him. Every opportunity she wrote him up, then she fired him. He didn't do anything wrong. Why the companies let that happen? Well, I guess that's why the EEOC was formed. But I don't want you to get out there and say the phrase that I've learned that I love is, when you get out there and these things happen to you, it doesn't matter the why. It is not you. Make the changes you need to make. Make them one day at a time. The steps, one step at a time. CYA, cover your ass. Document, document, document. So you have your timeline of events. And never be hurt. Because when you start, is it because I'm black? Is it because I'm male? Is it because I'm fat? Is it because I'm old? It don't make a difference. Other people are unhappy, and because they're unhappy and you walking around here joyous and you're you, and they don't like you because of your butt's too big. They don't, again, yeah. That was my, another story. A lady told me, now you know the hospital protocol says you have to wear a scrub top and a scrub bottom. So, I got my scrub top and my scrub bottom. The nurse says, my preceptor, every time I look over there, all I see is your butt. Mind you, there's no skin exposed. And I says, pardon me? She was like, you are too old and your butt is too big for you not to wear a lab coat. And she said this in the open at the nurse station in front of all these people. Should the size of my butt bother her? I've never had a BBL. I've had a butt all my life. Got it from my mama. No, it shouldn't. When I walk by, she's irritated. Why? That's her own insecurities of her own body that she's deflecting or putting on me. So, whether you're a new grad, black, male, whatever it is, those are their insecurities. And I remember the second time she said something to me about it. Set boundaries. Because the second time she said something about my butt, I told her, I said, you know, nursing is a profession. That is very unprofessional. And I said, and I take what you said as hurtful, and it was not polite, nor was it professional. And I said, so, if I'm following the hospital policy and procedure based on how you feel about me, or how you feel about my age and how I look, I shouldn't have a different quota or a different, uniform than everybody else. So, anyway, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, but it's the reality versus, that's how it is. And I don't want you to go out there naive and young and thinking, what is wrong with me? No. Stay prayed up. Keep on the armor of God. Keep moving forward. And know that everything that they're doing has been done before, and the government agencies are full aware of their antics. So, and one more thing before I go. I remember one day my dad came home. Mind you, this was 45 years ago. My dad came home and he was upset. And I said, Dad, what's wrong? And my dad said the people on his job called him a dumb N-word. And he just had to keep working while they made fun of him. And he worked hard. And my dad was a bodybuilder. He looked good. He had hair down his back, biracial. My dad was gorgeous. I love my daddy. But anyway. And I was like, man. And then you see all these Martin Luther King's birthday is a holiday, and we shall overcome. I remember I think I was LPN at that time. It was like 1994. I'm sitting next to this lady, and I'm working, and the charge nurse manager told her to do something. And the lady looked at me and said, how dare she tell me what to do? I'm not no. And then she said N-word to my face. And said, she should tell you to do it, not me. And it was open, and people that were typing actually stopped typing and then started back typing. And I'm like, I thought back. This was done to my dad when I was, 8, 9 years old. Now here it is. My kids is 3, 4 years old. It's 20-something years later, and I'm still... Then, 2022, April, and some lady was mad because she had to work with the black nurse. And she was like, why do I have to work with her? And she said, am I not Asian enough to work with the Asians? And I'm like, Asian enough? What is she talking about? She was mad because every time she had to work beside me. And people will try to tell you race is not an issue. I pray one day race won't be an issue for you. The little story I just told you, I don't know, 5 or 6 nurses was Filipino, and one was Vietnamese, or 5 or 6 were Vietnamese, and one was Filipino. And so everybody who spoke the same language or whatever was down there, and then that one always worked with me. She had a strong attitude about it. She was mad at me about it and told me about it. She was hot because she had to work with me. That was 2022, April 2022. It never be surprised of what the reckless words that come out people's mouth towards you, their attitudes towards you, their misdirected anger towards you. But reality, I don't want you to be just working and innocent and thinking, no, I'm setting this here for you. My father, I wish I could have made videos back then when what happened to him, and you could have saw the pain that was in his face. And he worked every day, paid off his house, and raised 15 kids after their mother passed away. My mother passed away with 6, and then other people dropped their kids off, and so my dad raised all 15 of us. But you'll go through these things in life, and depend on the institution. So I know one, I'm gonna give you I was down in Greensboro, North Carolina. This lady walks up to me and she says, and on this floor we use metoprolol. And metoprolol is a beta blocker. And the manager walked up and said, that's enough. She said, you can go back to work, Alice. Then she turned to the charge nurse and said, stop it. Don't let it happen again. That was the last time that lady tried to come over and give me a definition and a categorization of beta blockers. But that was excellent management. Different situation. A nurse was not managing up her team member. And the nurse was saying a bunch, she was just telling lies about her. Said she stole, she this, she that. So the nurse's co-workers, and she said it behind the lady's back, the nurse's co-workers all wrote up statements, took the statements to HR and said, this is not managing up, this is not in compliance with policy and procedure, this is not how we do things here. This lady has worked on this unit for 10 years and she works hard. She comes in on her off days, she works days, she works nights. And I'm like, this was not right and we don't want this to continue. HR called her in the office, gave her a 2-week, suspension. And then she had to go back to her previous job. She couldn't work on that floor, couldn't bed off that floor for a year. And that went in her employment file. But you see how some hospitals and facilities will nip it in the bud. And everybody, again, the best possible outcome for the team and for the patients. Then you have, one more scenario I'm gonna give you. It was a nurse or patient. Which one? I got so many I'm gonna give you, but I'm gonna keep it, shorter, next 2 or 3 minutes. Then you have where a tech was stop the pump, flush the IV with amiodarone drip, then take the patient to the bathroom, bring the patient back, connect the IV and press the start button. And I said, wait. I said, please do not disconnect any, and I went to the person first. I said, please do not disconnect any IVs from any patients that are assigned to me. I said, because that's administering medication. And he's like, I worked on an IC, I worked in an ER and we start IVs. I said, starting an IV is different from administering medication. If you don't know the side effects, the therapeutic effects, the harm it can cause to tissue if it infiltrates. Amiodarone, but by the time that necrosis and sets in from the amiodarone infiltration, and the patient has to have $1 million in skin grafts and all that unnecessary pain, nah, don't touch my IVs. So he kept doing it. So I went to the charge nurse. I said, I don't want them starting and stopping my IVs. On this particular unit, we titrated. We had Lasix drips, nitro drips, cortisone drips, amiodarone drips, retitrated. So I said, I don't want them starting or stopping my IVs. And pretty much when you have this high turnover of nurses, things are pretty much done, not how they're supposed to be done. They're done fast and quick to save time. So they were like, that they've been doing it like that. And I'm like, what the heck? So then I go to my manager. And I love the fact that my manager was open and listened, and because she first said to me, I've been working here since I graduated from nursing school. And when I came here, it was 4 or 5 years ago, this is how they've been doing it like this for that long. And I said, yeah. And she said, but again, if you feel uncomfortable because you have this amount of experience, she said, run it across the nurse educator. So I said, and she said, if the nurse educator has it, it says anything different, then, we'll fix it. So I ran across the nurse educator. The nurse educator said, oh, hell no. Next thing you know, we had this mandatory in-service. In-service here about you can't flush a medication, you can't flush an IV if it has medication in the loop, you can't start or stop a pump. On that particular unit, only in the ER are techs allowed to start IVs and flush them. It was a whole category the in-service went over. So once that happened, there was backlash. Next thing you know, she says, you're having a problem with your coworker? And I'm like, no. But he didn't want to work with me because, and I didn't even give his name. But who am I to come in and change how they're doing something for 5 or 10 years? I don't know. So then there was the backlash. Then next thing you know, I'm called in, written up for this. 2 weeks later, I'm called in. I was like, look here, you don't got to write me up anymore. Let me just give you my 2-week notice. You want me in writing? All because I tried to be a prudent nurse and advocate for my patients. Oh well, I lived through it. So, false expectations versus reality. I love you. And these are some lessons that when you go into, your father has a song called 2020. Because, we grew up on Clearview. Your dad raised some of y'all on Clearview. And his song called 2020, Tang, I want you to walk out into whatever profession you're in with a clear view, not having false expectations. And if you are blessed with a group of beautiful people who work well together, who don't care what skin color you are, who don't care what religion you are, who just love you because you're there on time, you work hard, you give it your all, you get up out your sleep, come in and help out in the middle of a crisis. If you are blessed with those type of people, thank God. Thank God. And retire from there.